The most powerful forces in the world don't want you to know this secret. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's not a myth. It's a key, an ancient method so profound that it has been feared by those in power for centuries. And the one who dared to pull back the curtain on this secret is ex-occultist Mark Passio. Ready to learn Passio's knowledge on the chosen few? These are the true heroes of this world, those who have transformed darkness into light for centuries. And the tool for this is the Trivium Method. The Trivium Method. This system of learning dates back to the classical world, rooted in ancient Greek and Roman traditions. It was passed down through generations, influencing thinkers like Aristotle and even being echoed in Christian theology during the Middle Ages. Its beauty lies in its simplicity. It teaches you how to think, not what to think. Yet, despite its straightforward nature, it holds the power to dismantle lies and pierce through the veil of deception that clouds our modern world. Imagine being handed a map when everyone else is wandering blindly through a maze. That's the essence of the Trivium. It consists of 3 steps: understanding the facts, processing them with logic, and expressing your conclusions clearly. But don't let its simplicity fool you. This isn't just a study technique or a way to sound smart in debates. It's a weapon of liberation. The first step of the Trivium is about gathering knowledge. Think of it as laying a foundation. Passio calls it the grammar phase, but this isn't about punctuation or sentence structure. It's about taking in raw data, unfiltered, unmanipulated truths. Imagine you're standing in a field of weeds, looking for the seeds of truth hidden among the noise. You can't start pulling weeds until you identify what's real and what's just in your way. This step is where most people stumble because modern society is designed to overload you with information. Mark often references Plato's allegory of the cave here. He explains that most people are like prisoners in the cave, only seeing the shadows on the wall. They mistake illusions for reality because they've never been taught how to truly observe the world. But with the Trivium, you learn to distinguish between shadows and light. In this stage, there's no judgment, no opinion, just observation. It's the raw intake of facts, much like how a farmer gathers seeds before planting. Without this clarity, you can't move forward. The next step is where the magic, or rather the alchemy, happens. Mark calls it the logic phase. This is where you process everything you've gathered and test it against reason. Imagine taking all those seeds and seeing which ones are viable, which will grow, which will produce fruit. Logic is the fire that burns away the falsehoods, leaving only truth behind. Mark warns us that this phase is deliberately suppressed by those in power. They don't want you to think critically. They'd rather have you parrot their version of reality, never asking questions, never challenging the narrative. But the Trivium empowers you to see through their lies. It's no wonder that during the Middle Ages, this method was reserved for the elite, while the masses were kept illiterate and distracted. To drive this point home, Mark often compares the logic phase to the biblical story of King Solomon. Known for his wisdom, Solomon didn't just accept appearances. When 2 women claimed to be the mother of a baby, he tested their claims with a seemingly cruel solution. He offered to cut the child in 2. The true mother revealed herself through her willingness to sacrifice for the child's life. Solomon's ability to reason revealed the hidden truth. Finally, the Trivium culminates in the Rhetoric phase. This is where you take the truth you've uncovered and share it with the world. But this isn't about being persuasive for the sake of winning arguments. It's about speaking with integrity, shining a light into the darkness, and helping others break free from the illusions that bind them. Mark often likens this phase to the teachings of Jesus, who spoke in parables not to obscure truth, but to make it accessible. Jesus knew that truth must resonate in the heart as well as the mind. In the same way, the Trivium empowers you to communicate in a way that doesn't just inform, but transforms. What makes Mark's revelation so explosive is that the Trivium isn't some dusty relic of the past. It's alive. It's waiting for you to use it. But here's the unsettling truth. The same tool that can liberate you has been weaponized by those who seek control. Mark calls this the dark trivium, a twisted version of the method that skips understanding and logic, jumping straight to rhetoric. Think of propaganda, where half-truths are spun into compelling narratives designed to manipulate. This is why he's so passionate about teaching the authentic trivium. It's not just a method, it's a shield against deception. The question isn't whether you'll use the trivium. The question is whether you'll use it consciously or let someone else use it against you. As Mark says, knowledge, like fire, is neither good nor evil. It all depends on who wields it and how. This is just the beginning. The trivium opens the door to understanding not only the forces at work in our world, but also the potential within you to rise above them. Mark didn't break his silence to scare you. He did it to empower you. Now the choice is yours. Will you stay in the shadows, or will you step into the light? Next, Passio has revealed what he calls the most insidious tool of the powerful: mind control. He isn't talking about Hollywood-style hypnosis or science fiction brainwashing. No, this is far more subtle and far more dangerous. Mind control. What if your thoughts aren't entirely your own? What if the choices you make, the things you believe, and even the emotions you feel are being carefully shaped by forces you can't see? It's the invisible web spun around us, crafted to keep us obedient, distracted, and disconnected from our true potential. Passio, who once walked among those who use this knowledge to maintain dominance, now dedicates his life to exposing how it works and how to break free. One of the first things he explains is that mind control isn't about forcing compliance. It's about making you believe you're choosing it. It's the illusion of freedom, a carefully curated reality designed to keep you from asking questions. To illustrate this, Mark often refers to Plato's allegory of the cave. In this ancient parable, prisoners are chained in a cave, forced to watch shadows on a wall, believing those shadows to be the full extent of reality. They never turn around to see the fire casting the shadows, nor the people manipulating those images. Mark insists that we are those prisoners. The shadows on the wall are the narratives we consume daily, the news, the advertisements, the cultural norms. The chains are the systems designed to keep us too busy, too fearful, or too distracted to turn around and see the truth. This is no accident. Mind control is orchestrated through what Passio calls the dynamic of fear and desire. He explains that those in power understand human psychology deeply. They know that people can be controlled through their fears, fear of rejection, fear of poverty, fear of death, and through their desires for comfort, approval, and material success. This isn't new. Religious texts like the Bible often speak of false idols and the dangers of being enslaved to worldly pursuits. Passio argues that these warnings were meant to protect us from the very traps being used against us today. One of the most powerful tools of mind control, according to Mark, is repetition. If you hear something enough times, it becomes part of your reality, whether it's true or not. Governments, corporations, and media outlets use this tactic relentlessly. They repeat the same ideas, slogans, and messages until they are embedded in your subconscious. To emphasize this, Mark points to the words of Buddha: "What you think, you become." If your thoughts are not your own, what are you becoming? The more you accept the repeated lies, the more your perception of reality is shaped to serve someone else's agenda. This creates a cycle where people are not just participants, but enforcers of their own mental chains. Mark also delves into how symbolism is used to manipulate the mind. He describes it as a language that bypasses logic and goes straight to the subconscious. From corporate logos to political imagery, symbols are everywhere, speaking to you in ways you might not even realize. Take, for example, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, a symbol of deception. Passio argues that modern symbols carry similar meanings, manipulating us on a level so deep we often don't see it happening. Another key aspect of mind control is the suppression of critical thinking. Education systems, Mark claims, are designed not to teach you how to think but to condition you to obey. Schools prioritize rote memorization over inquiry, ensuring that most people grow up accepting authority without question. To break this cycle, Passio emphasizes the importance of reclaiming our minds through self-education and questioning everything we've been told. Mark frequently quotes Jesus' words, "The truth will set you free," but adds a chilling reminder, truth isn't handed to you, it must be sought. Those in power will not give you the keys to your liberation. They rely on your complacency, your willingness to remain distracted by trivialities while the real strings are being pulled behind the scenes. Mind control doesn't just operate on an individual level, it affects entire societies. Passio warns that when enough people are under its spell, they become willing participants in their own oppression. Wars are fought, freedoms are surrendered, and injustices are accepted because the collective mind has been shaped to believe these things are necessary or inevitable. Breaking free from this system is no easy task. It requires courage, introspection, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It means stepping out of the cave, even if the light burns your eyes at first. Mark often compares this journey to the story of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give humanity enlightenment. Prometheus was punished for his defiance, but his gift symbolized the spark of awareness that can ignite change. Passio's revelations are not meant to instill fear, but to awaken you to your own power. He insists that the first step to freedom is recognizing the chains. Once you see them, they lose their hold over you. The question is, will you have the courage to take that step, or will you continue to watch the shadows? This is only the beginning of the story. The battle for your mind is real, but so is the possibility of liberation. Mark Passio has lit the torch, and with it, he revealed something far greater. He insists that spiritual awakening and personal responsibility are the most powerful tools humanity has to create a just and balanced society. Yet these tools are often ignored or misunderstood, buried under layers of apathy, ignorance, and moral relativism. The importance of spiritual awakening. Passio doesn't sugarcoat the journey. Awakening to spiritual truths, he says, is like stepping into a storm. It's messy, unsettling, and it forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather avoid, but the alternative, remaining asleep, is far worse. He describes it as living in a prison of your own making, a cage where the bars are forged from fear, denial, and willful ignorance. He often references the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. This ancient teaching suggests that the external world reflects our internal state, and vice versa. If the world seems filled with corruption, injustice, and suffering, it's because humanity as a whole has allowed these things to take root within. Passio argues that true change must begin at the individual level. Each person must awaken to their own role in either perpetuating or dismantling these destructive systems. Apathy, he warns, is one of the greatest obstacles to this awakening. Passio calls it a spiritual sickness, a refusal to care about the suffering of others or the state of the world. He compares it to the story of the Good Samaritan, where several people pass by a man in desperate need before one stops to help. In this parable, apathy is the act of walking by, convincing yourself that someone else will handle it or that it's not your problem. Passio insists that this mindset is what allows evil to thrive. Ignorance is another barrier, and not the innocent kind. He speaks of willful ignorance, the choice to look away from uncomfortable truths. Passio believes that many people prefer the comfort of their illusions to the harsh reality of the world. He likens this to the biblical story of Jonah, who tries to flee from his responsibilities only to be swallowed by a great fish. Just as Jonah couldn't escape his divine mission, Passio argues that humanity cannot escape the consequences of its ignorance. Perhaps most controversial is his critique of moral relativism, the idea that right and wrong are subjective and can change depending on circumstances or personal beliefs. Passio sees this as a tool of manipulation, a way for those in power to justify their actions and keep the masses confused. He often cites the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, as a universal moral truth that transcends cultures and religions. Rejecting this truth, he says, leads to chaos, division, and suffering. He also emphasizes the role of knowledge in this awakening. Passio often quotes the philosopher Socrates, who said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This humility is crucial, he argues, because it opens the door to learning and growth. True wisdom isn't about memorizing facts or adopting beliefs. It's about seeking understanding and applying it in your life. The storm of awakening might be fierce, but it's also cleansing. It tears down illusions and reveals the truth beneath. And in that truth, Passio insists, lies the power to create a world that reflects the best of humanity instead of the worst. The question is, will you step into the storm, or will you cling to the safety of the familiar? The choice, as always, is yours. But Passio's teachings on spiritual awakening and responsibility don't end with familiar concepts like karma or moral integrity. He often dives into more obscure beliefs, challenging people to expand their understanding of spiritual truths. One such belief is the concept of Egregors, a term from esoteric philosophy that refers to a collective thought form or energy created by a group of people. While the word might sound strange, its meaning is simple and deeply relevant to the modern world. The egregor. An egregor forms when a group of individuals focus their mental energy on a shared idea, belief, or goal. This focused energy gives rise to a kind of spiritual entity that exists beyond the physical world, but still exerts influence over it. Egregores can be positive or negative, depending on the intentions and actions of those who create them. For example, when communities come together to build something good, like a movement for peace, justice, or mutual aid, they can create a positive egregor. This entity doesn't just inspire individuals within the group. It has the power to ripple outward, influencing others to join in or act with similar intentions. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. The light grows stronger as more people bring their own flames. But Passio warns that the opposite is also true. When people focus on fear, hate, greed, or domination, they feed negative egregores. These entities can become incredibly powerful, perpetuating cycles of harm and oppression. Passio likens this to feeding a beast. The more energy you give it, whether through action, attention, or even fear, the stronger it becomes. This belief is obscure, but it aligns with other spiritual traditions. The concept of egregores is reminiscent of the Buddhist teaching on collective karma, where the actions and intentions of a group affect their shared reality. It also echoes the biblical idea that where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them. Passio uses these parallels to show that this concept isn't just a relic of obscure occultism. It's a universal truth, recognized in different ways across cultures and beliefs. Passio argues that understanding egregores is essential for spiritual awakening because it reveals how interconnected we are. It's not just about personal responsibility, it's about collective responsibility. When you realize that your thoughts, actions, and energy contribute to something larger, it becomes impossible to ignore the impact you're having on the world. He often asks people to examine the egregores they're feeding, consciously or unconsciously. Are you contributing to a culture of fear by engaging in divisive arguments or spreading misinformation? Or are you feeding a movement of love and truth by uplifting others and standing for what's right? Passio also challenges the idea that individuals are powerless against large systems of control. He insists that negative egregores, no matter how strong, can be weakened and eventually dissolved when enough people withdraw their energy from them. This withdrawal doesn't require grand gestures. It begins with small, deliberate choices. For instance, if a corporation profits from exploitation, choosing not to support it is a way of starving the egregor it has created. If fear dominates your community, showing kindness and courage weakens that hold. These actions may seem insignificant on their own, but Passio reminds us that collective change is built from individual choices. The belief in egregores also offers an explanation for why awakening can feel so difficult. Passio compares it to trying to swim against a strong current. When negative egregores dominate a society, they exert a pull on everyone within it, making it easier to go along with the status quo than to resist it. But just as a single stone can create ripples in a pond, a single awakened individual can disrupt this flow, inspiring others to do the same. Passio frequently refers to the story of David and Goliath as a metaphor for this struggle. The giant, Goliath, represents a massive negative egregor, a seemingly unstoppable force built from fear, domination, and collective ignorance. David, armed only with a slingshot and his faith, represents the awakened individual who refuses to bow to this force. Passio insists that each of us has the power to be like David, to confront the Goliaths in our own lives by aligning with truth and integrity. He also warns that ignoring the existence of egregores doesn't exempt you from their influence. Just as you can't avoid the wind by pretending it isn't there, you can't escape the impact of collective energy by choosing to look away. Awakening to spiritual truths means recognizing not only your individual power, but also your responsibility as part of a larger whole. Ultimately, Passio's message is one of empowerment. He believes that awakening to spiritual truths and taking responsibility for your actions is not just a personal journey, but a collective one. When enough people wake up, the world itself can transform. It's not a quick or easy process, but it's one worth undertaking. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.